Okay, so yeah, so it will be recorded. So as I was saying, so the Allison team has been working hard to come up with clear information and examples to illustrate this new policy that has been adopted at the AGM this year. And so if you have any questions along the way, I invite you to go on the website, the Allison website. Most probably the information or the answer to your question will be there. So if you go on the Allison website, under the tab for lawyers, you will see this new sub-tab for the CLE. Under that sub-tab, you will have 6 sub-tabs here that will give you all the information about CLE. So we will go through the first one, the overview, since it's the one that all the most important information is. But I briefly want to say, so the second sub-tab is eligible CLE hours, activity, I'm sorry. So we will keep saying that you will need to report 12 CLE hours, but what can be those 12 hours? So we'll have a list of CLE activities. We have one question. Are you able to switch to full screen? Oh, yes. Okay, hopefully you can. Okay, hopefully you can see the full screen right there. Thank you. So yeah, so under the second sub-tab here, eligible CLE activities, you will have a list of the CLE activities as well as examples. But we'll come back to it. Weather permitting, we'll go through that sub-tab. So as I said, so the first one is the overview. So you will see the basic requirement for the 12 hours of eligible CLE hours. Including those 2 hours that we mentioned a lot in the past year, which is the first hour devoted to professional responsibility and ethics, as well as the hour devoted to cultural competence. So you'll have the definitions right there. Underneath, you will have the 2 particular situations of members who became members of the LSN along the way. So in a year, for example, in September of 2022, but we'll come back to this particular situation. Then underneath you have those members unable to complete their hours. And then just a little wink on how to report your hours, which is exactly what we will be discussing today. So underneath this, you have the exemptions, which we'll look at now, which is the first step in your process of reporting your hours. So the very first step is to make sure that you don't fall under an exemption, or if you do, then to make sure that to know if you need to report hours or no. So if I come back here, so you will find those 4 exemptions on the website. But we will discuss it now since we had some questions coming in the last few weeks, especially on the exam. So I thought it would be useful to just discuss it together today. So we have 4 main exemptions for the requirement of the 12 CLE hours. The first one, quite simple, is for students at law. So if you completed your, for example, the CPLED or any bar admission course during the year, and you got admitted during the year in the LSN, then you do not have to complete any CLE hours for 2022. And before I move on, I just want to clarify this. So, and I hope it will be clear. So when we say that you do not have to report hours, it's for this year. So for 2022, so from January till December 2022. And then, so those hours you will need to report the next year, so January 2023, in your renewal form. So in the renewal form that you will be submitted in 2023, you will report on the hours that you will complete in 2022. So, and I know it can be quite confusing. So we have quite a lot of examples online to differentiate those years. So hopefully it's clear enough. So this is the first exemption for students at law. The second exemption is for inactive members. So if you're an inactive member, then you do not have to complete any CLE hours. The only thing is if you become an active member during the year, then you will need to complete, and this is the logic that we will see for the next two exemptions, is you will need to complete 1 CLE hour per month you are an active member. So let's take an example. If you became an active member in September, then so September, October, November, and December. So you have 4 months that you were an active member in 2022. Therefore, you need to complete 4 CLE hours. And this is the same logic for new members. So, and this is something I wanted to clarify. So new members can be quite confusing with students at law, since both of them get called to the bar in the year. But new members, they don't complete a bar admission. They're not considered student at law. They are already lawyers in another jurisdiction. If you're a member at the Law Society of Ontario and you get called to the bar in Nunavut in September, let's take the same example, then not like the students at law that do not need to complete any hours, you will need to complete 1 hour per month. So if you get called in September, you will need to report 4 hours. And then the fourth exemption is members on leave, or if you're unable to practice. So once again, online, you will see quite a good list of examples of acceptable reasons, as well as, examples of reasons not acceptable to fall on that exemption. So one example is parental leave, right? So if you're on parental leave until September, then you will need to report 4 hours. So this is the first step in the reporting process to make sure that you fall or no under an exemption. So before we move on, do you have any question on the exemptions? No? Okay. So I think it's going okay. Let me see. Stop share. Okay, so I will share my screen for the Allison website. Okay. So as we mentioned online, you have access to your renewal form all year long. So it is very for you if you prefer to log your hours as you go during the year. This is totally feasible. Don't forget to save your session after each time to make sure that you don't lose your information. Or if you prefer to simply put all the information at the end of the year, all at once, it's for you, but you do have access to your renewal all the time. So this is your renewal. It's just like, in the past years. So if you scroll down, you will see your CLE report, and this is where everything is. So the first step is to check one of those statements that you see on the screen. The first statement is, if I can say, the regular member who has been a member of the Law Society of Nunavut from January till December of the calendar year. So no exemption, you will need to complete 12 hours. So if you fall under no exemptions, then you check this and you see you have this little box that appears here. We will come back to this. Just briefly, so coming back to exemptions that we discussed, if you were on a leave or unable to practice, you check on this. And then you see that you have to put the date, the period of time you were unable to practice. If it's the whole year, then simply say January 1st to December 31st. And then you will need to put the number of hours. So if you were unable to practice for the whole year, you simply say 0 here. And sorry, here just put also an explanation. If it's parental leave, you can say parental leave. If it was an illness, just a bit of details for the executive to understand the situation. So this is the second statement. So the third one is the student at law that we discussed. And if you check that statement, you see that nothing appears. So if you're a student at law, you do not have to complete any hours. So that is done for you. This is your CLE report. Everything is done. The fourth one is the new member. So you will need to put the date of admission and then count. So if you were admitted in September, then you would put 4 here. And then you would add your CLE activities. The fifth one, once again, it's for inactive member. And if you check, nothing appears. So you are done. And then the sixth one is what we briefly discussed. If you're an inactive member becoming an active member, so you would put the date of change. If you became an active member in September or October, let's say October, you put 3, and then that's it. Okay. Before we move into the real reporting, how to report, do you have any questions for this? No? Okay. So let's come back to the first line, 12 hours of CLE. So you would click on add CLE activities right there. So this is what the reporting would look like for every activity. And I have my tab here for the eligible CLE activities. So as I said earlier, so I invite you while you do your reporting to have this tab open. So this is the second sub tab in the CLE section, and you will have all the types, types of activities that you can report on, and the maximum of hours that can be of that particular activity. So, and if you need any description examples, you can have them right here. So have that tab handy. If you have any questions or you're not sure, all the information will be right there. So the first step is to decide what kind or type of activity it was. So let's take a few examples together. So first example, if you participated in last week event that the LSN had about Aboriginal law, right? So if you participated in live, so it was a live program and course. So when you take one activity, then the ratio and the maximum hours will appear. So the maximum hours, it will be the same as here in the table. And the ratio, will come back to it in a minute. So the first type, you put it in there. The course name, let's say, was original law. I don't remember the full name, but let's say it was that. I think it was 1 hour, let's say 1 hour. And then for the description, so since this activity was organized by the Law Society of Nunavut, we are aware of it. We know what it was. We probably participated ourselves. So you do not have to put a lot of information. You can simply say it was presented by and then the name of the lawyer. But if it was an activity that was organized by CBA or the Law Society of Ontario, then you would put a bit more description since we're not aware of it. I was an attendee. I just participated. It was last Monday. And then the location, I participated online. I would just say Zoom. So this is the first activity, quite simple. And then you can add as many activities as you need for this. So my second activity, let's say for the same activity last week, Aboriginal law, November 21st, but I couldn't attend. So I watched it afterwards on the Law Society's YouTube channel. And I also take this opportunity to promote our YouTube channel. So the Law Society has a YouTube channel. You can simply search the Law Society of Nunavut, and we will be posting those CLE activities in there. So if you cannot participate in real time, then you can always watch it afterwards. So let's say I watch it today, right? So the activity will be quite different. So because it's not a live program, it will be an on-demand program right there. So you see that the maximum of hour changed. So it's from 9 to 6. Course, it's the same name, Aboriginal law. Let's say it's about 1 hour. Same thing, just a brief description. I was an attendee. The only thing is for the date, I put the date that you watched it. So if I watched it today, I would pick today's date. I did the location, I would simply say YouTube, right? So another activity, and then they will just add, right? You will see all activities that you log in. Last example, it will be a bit trickier. So let's say that last week's event was a panel, right? A lot of experts came, talked about Aboriginal law, and I was one of the panelists. I was an invited speaker. So once again, the activity will change, and it will be considered as an invited speaker. And so you see that the ratio changed. So 3 types of activities has been given a different ratio. So 1 to 2 ratio, the invited speaker, the moot court, and the teaching course. So those 3 has been given a different ratio to reflect preparation time. So let's do this logic together. Once again, same name. But so last week was 1 hour, right? And here we have maximum hours of activity. And I want to take a moment to differentiate those terms. So maximum hours of activity versus maximum eligible CLE hours. So when we mention hours of activity, we talked about 60 minutes of time. So this is it's an hour. And so you have a maximum of twice 60 minutes that can be spent on this. And then the eligible CLE hours will be times 2. So if I spend 60 minutes, so 1 hour on the panel as an invited speaker, then I would log 2 CLE hours. Let's say that the activity lasted for 2 hours, then I would log 4 CLE hours. But let's say that it was a whole day. It was a panel that lasted for 8 hours, a very busy day. Then I cannot log 16 hours, right? It's the maximum 4, no matter how long it may have lasted. And then for the activity, I invite you, just for clarity, to simply say that the activity lasted for 1 hour, or 2 hours in that case. Right, so it lasted for 2 hours, but I'm logging 4 CLE hours. So in here I was right, the date was last week, and the location I can say the Frobisher Inn, if it was at the Frobe. And then that's it. And then you would add all your hours until you have reached that 12 hours. And make sure that you have at least 1 hour that is for cultural competency right there. And we have one very interesting 1 hour event on our YouTube channel. So if you hadn't had the chance to participate in real time, we have one on the YouTube channel for cultural competency about the history of Afro-Canadians. Very interesting. And then you have 1 hour, and I cannot find it. It's not for professional responsibility and ethics. So just make sure that both of them are covered in your 12 hours. And then once you're done, make sure that you check this box right here, which is you will need to check it. Simply to remind you that if the Law Society, we have any questions while we review your hours, that you may be asked to have proof of participation. So that can be the PowerPoint that they gave you, or any other proofs of participation. And then, as you know, you can save as draft as you go, or in January when you're ready to submit your renewal, you simply say, you save it as ready to publish. And then you can save it, and then the administrator, my colleague, will look at your renewal all together, including your CLE report. Last, and I know it's almost one, last thing, so the third sub-tab in that section is called how to report your CLE hours. And you will find those screenshots of everything that we looked at together right now. So if you have if you don't remember anything, you will be able to see those screenshots, and today will also be recorded. So you will be able to listen to it again. So this is a brief overview of how to report your hours. So I hope I answered some of your questions, but I'm all ears if you have more questions or any other topics that we didn't have the chance to talk about today. Okay, so we have one question here. So I completed a 2-day live course for an Ontario live course. In Ontario, it counts for 8 hours, 45 minutes of substantive law, 2 hours, 15 minutes of professionalism, in 1 hour, okay. But it was all in one live course, and I'm allowed 9 hours for live course. Can I account all of those hours somehow? Yes. So, and I hope I understand your question correctly. One person is asking if they can account, how long was it? 8 hours altogether. So if we take here again, so it was a live course. Here, your maximum is 9. So you can say 9 hours here. And then if I correct, you have 2 hours and 15 minutes of professionalism. So if we come back to the overview, so you will need 1 hour on professional responsibility and ethics. So if what you mean by professionalism, you think it goes under the definition that we have here on professional responsibility and ethics, then just say in your activity that 1 hour was on professional responsibility and ethics, and then your requirement will be okay. So definitely you can account for that 8 hours of live course altogether. I hope Yes.
Can I pop in on that? But so it was my question, and the point of my question is it actually adds up to 12 hours. We need 12 hours total CLE. That program is 12 hours when you add it all up. But if I do it as live program, I can only do 9. Do you understand?
Yes. Okay. Okay. I did not understand it was, I thought it was all together. No. So, the maximum would be 9. So you would need 3 hours of a different kind of activity. The total of 9 hours cannot be on the same, kind of activity.
Okay. So I guess I'll have to pick up a couple of courses along the way.
Yeah, but so as I said, so we have our YouTube channel. We so if you want some there, but you have one. So I see that you have one on equality and inclusion. So our definition of cultural competency, it's broader, and we do include inclusion. So you can include that 1 hour of inclusion as cultural competency. And this year we separated that. So even if it was a live program, because it's a standalone kind of activity, you can report that alone. So you would have 10 hours.
Yeah, so it'll just be something on professionalism I'll need.
Absolutely, yes.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Of course. Okay, so we have another question. So are we able to claim rollover credits? In BC, if you earn more than 12 credits, you can roll it over to the next year. That is a very good question. This is something, and to be very honest, it's our first year that we have this. So we haven't discussed rollover credits. This is something I'm taking notes of, but as of now, no, we do not have rollover credits, but this is something that we can discuss in the next years. But it's a very good question. We haven't included anything about rollover. Third question, how does one verify attending a seminar on the YouTube platform? Another great question. We cannot verify if you actually watched the YouTube a YouTube video or something. We trust, it's about a trust that we build with the members. So if we do ask for proof of if you actually watched the YouTube, then just make sure that you know when you watched it, just the date, and maybe where you were, if you were at work or at home. But we don't, there's no other proof of if you watched a YouTube video or something. And the last question, what if I completed all the CLE trainings we had this November in Nunavut? How do I report that? What do you mean? Okay, so if you completed all the CLE trainings we had this November, do you mind, Catherine, if you can explain a bit more your question? I'm not sure I understand. There, Catherine? Or were you looking at if we can do the, I think the cultural competency Aboriginal? Okay, well, that's great. So this is, as I said, because it's the Law Society of Nunavut, we organize those events. You do not have to put a lot of details in here in the description of the activity, but you will need to report that. So so the Aboriginal law, so we did it together, right? So this is what we've been doing. If you attended last week, then it would be a live program. The cultural competency, if you watch it on the YouTube, then it's on demand. How many hours do I put? Oh, I cannot remember on top of my head, but I do. That reminds me. So if you do not know how many hours, so if you click on the last sub tab here, you have the CLE activities. And right there, you'll have the activities, only those organized by us. So for example, November events. So the code of conduct right there. So you know it was 1 hour. So you just look at the time. If you cannot remember how long it was, then all the information is right there. And then for Aboriginal law, so it was 1 hour, 1 hour and 15 minutes, all depending how long it was in real life. But yeah, so that's how I would respond to your question. You can look at, and this is a good information for the future as well. If you participate in an event by the Law Society, all the information ever will be in this tab here. So if you don't remember the name of the presenter, where it was, how long it was, everything will be in there. So I hope I answered correctly your question. Yeah, super. Do you have any more questions for now? But as I said, we it's the first time that we have the CLE report in the renewal form in January. So if you have any questions along the way, don't hesitate to, you can email the support account, so support@lawsociety.nu.ca, and then we'll be happy to answer your questions. But so is the deadline to report CLE activities December 31st each year? It will be at during your renewal form. So the renewal, on top of my head, I think it's the end of January. So 31st of January. So this is the same at the same time. So when you need to submit your you're welcome to your renewal form, then you need to report your CLE hours. Okay, then if there's no more questions, I would end this session on this. But if you have, once again, if you have more questions, don't hesitate. And just as a friendly advice, if you have any questions, it's always easier for us if you can send us before the end of the year, just because January is quite busy in our team. So it will give us more time to properly answer your question if you send it to us in December. But we understand that life happens and everything. But thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to learn more in advance how to do the reporting. It's always useful. So I'll stay here for another 2 minutes if you have any questions, any more questions, but that would be it. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon.